Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for participating in our today's session hosted by MyTax and a range of our esteemed colleagues from different branches of government, all rallying around supporting our thriving quantum ecosystem. Today's webinar will be specifically focused on IP and how you protect IP developed within your quantum companies and what sort of services are available from different government agencies around protecting your IP and commercializing your IP as we move forward. Trying to move to my next slide here. There we go. A few housekeeping notes before we start. Obviously, the session is being recorded. Questions can be asked in the Zoom chat. I'll be monitoring the chat and we'll basically be redistributing questions to our speakers and panelists. We will also be recording the questions later time because some speakers might be actually joining in a little bit later or have to leave due to other commitments, but we will be transmitting all your questions pointed at different government colleagues and seek answers from them. All the participant presentations include contact information as well, and these decks will be shared after the webinar with all participants. So you will have access to contact information for our different colleagues who are participating and speaking today. Here is a run of the show and a brief agenda for the program today. As you see, we've got quite a packed day full of many useful conversations and talks, followed by a panel discussion. I'll be starting with a very brief overview of MyTax, who we are, what we do, and our role in the ecosystem. And then I'll pass it off to a number of our speakers. We will take a quick bio break of 5 minutes at around 2 p.m. And then we'll just continue on the speaking segments with 3 funding programs for SMEs, focusing around different IP services. At about 3 p.m., we will have a very engaging panel discussions with 3 colleagues who are joining us from different industries in the sector to share their experiences about IP and their ventures. And then we'll then close with some last minute Q&As and other closing remarks. A little bit about MyTax. We are, for those of you who are not familiar with us, a national not-for-profit agency funded by a range of partners within the government, both federal and provincial. And together, in collaboration with our different partners in the ecosystem, our mandate is to essentially help and support our companies and not-for-profit organizations, as well as municipal partners, solve their different innovation challenges by solutions that we bring to them from post-secondary institutions. Our particular focus in our programming is essentially providing talent. In this particular case, it would be talent that could come to address a variety of quantum-related challenges from a variety of different departments within the schools, from physics to mathematics to computer science. We are able to engage in these activities thanks to continual funding from our various government funders. The primary federal funder of MyTax programming is ISED. We do have colleagues from ISED joining us today as well to speak about different programs, but we also have active partnerships and relationships with all provincial governments. And together we work to support the ecosystem, the thriving ecosystem of quantum technologies in Canada. I'm not going to bore you with the details of our purpose and mission and vision, but broadly speaking, at MyTax, we live and breathe innovation. We thrive to support innovation ecosystems in Canada, boost R&D expenditures by the part of the companies, and also help de-risk the whole process of engaging with academic institutions around innovation challenges for our company partners. MyTax is an agency that has been in existence for well over 23 years. With a range of advisors on the ground who are present in each and every academic institution across Canada. And together we essentially collaborate with our industry partners on supporting more than 50,000 innovation projects. And at every stage along the way, we will be working with you from identifying the right kind of candidates for your projects to developing applications, making introductions, and hopefully getting your projects to the funding stage. As I mentioned, the idea and the vision for MyTax for the quantum segment is essentially to hopefully amplify the economic benefits of R&D, given that this is a young sector with many technologies still in early development, hopefully supporting our emerging startup ecosystem. We do have quite a few of our prominent startups already in our network and active users of our programs, And of course, trying to secure, using a collection of our domestic and international programs, a supply of talent, diverse talent that this growing sector would require in the years to come. Just a snapshot of MyTax's footprint across the quantum ecosystem in Canada. Hopefully that will be enough to show that we have a national presence. We are actively partnering with prominent players in the sector and in the segment, above and beyond our government funders, obviously. Some 40 quantum startups are within our network and actively using our programs, and some of them, larger or smaller ones, you will be hearing from in a panel discussion. The likes of Xanadu will be one of them, essentially. Now, with that, I would like to take a moment to introduce our first speaker for today, Michael Rosenblatt. Michael is a director of the Federal Science and Technology Policy Directorate and National Quantum Strategy and QS with ISET, Innovation, Science and Economic Development arm of the federal government. Michael's team essentially is the liaison between the minister and the NQS and the NRC, sorry, and coordinates horizontal federal science and technology policy. This includes responsibilities for policy development, coordination of the implementation of the NQS, both domestically and internationally. Michael has a PhD in public administration from Carleton University and an MA in public policy from McMaster University and an honors MBA from Wilfrid Laurier University in political science and business. And with that, I would like to pass it off to Michael to kickstart our first speaking segment for today. And I'll be in charge of rolling over the slides for Michael. Michael, the floor is yours.
Super. Thank you very much. And good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour à toutes et tous. And thanks very much to MyTax for sponsoring and hosting this session today on this important topic of intellectual property. I have a couple of slides to go through. Some of these will be familiar. Looking at the attendees, I saw a lot of familiar names and faces. The first slide goes over a background, a little bit of quantum science. I'm sure it's familiar to this group about being the study, manipulation, and control of systems at the atomic and subatomic level. It's an enabling platform that can generate major advances. As well as Canada, and not surprisingly, according to the map just shown before, we actually have a similar one on the next slide, which shows how many hubs we have across the country. Those will be familiar to most of you in Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, Montreal, and Toronto. And you can see the various different expertises we have from coast to coast. Also, a quick shout out there at the bottom. Sorry, just 1 second before we move over to Quantum Industry Canada, who I think either Scott or McKelly will be presenting in the next session, which is a consortium that they'll talk about. So we're pleased to support them as well as MyTax and the other players. Over the next slide, we just talked for a second about Canada's standing. Sometimes we get into the nuts and bolts. It's a good idea on occasion to step back and say, how are we doing in terms of the world? Well, we're doing pretty well, I think. We rank 8th in the world in terms of total public investment in quantum science and tech, 3rd in the world for attracting private investment, 2nd in the world for quantum computing firms, and the 5th most cited papers by H-index in the world, as well as a number of other company and other specific related accomplishments. D-Wave, of course, first computer, 1QBit recognized as the first software company, Xanadu, Photonic, and many others are making breakthroughs in terms of scaling quantum computers. And of course, our quantum researchers are world-class with impactful publications measured with ARC scores of 1.96. So while we may not produce the most articles or information, what we do produce is of super high value. So now going over the slide, we talk about a quantum strategy for Canada. And then, as you'll know, in budget 2021, we dedicated $360 million over 7 years. So this is all new money in order to amplify our strengths, grow technologies and companies, and solidify Canadian leadership. There are 3 stakeholder consultations we conducted, and many of the folks on the line participated in that, so thank you very much. They confirmed 3 pillars: research, talent, and commercialization. No huge surprises there. Those appear in a number of different strategies. But what is more germane to today's conversation is the cross-cutting themes: security, international collaboration, and at least at the bottom of the list, but certainly not the bottom of our intentions, intellectual property. And so those did come up, those 3, and intellectual property in particular, came up through our consultations, although I must say it was at a fairly high and general level. And you'll see in the National Quantum Strategy itself, intellectual property is referenced a few times, but it's a fairly sort of general representation. And it's our hope that through discussions like the ones today, that we can receive a little bit more information and perhaps have a little bit more of a nuanced discussion about intellectual property. So then in terms of the rollout of the NQS, what we decided to do was to use existing programming because we thought that would be the most effective way to get the funds out the door and continue the momentum. On the next slide, please, the strategy itself looks to communicate, highlight, and define. We want to communicate our commitment, or the federal government's commitment to quantum technology, as we've invested over $1 billion over the last 10 years in quantum, as well as to our international partners. In some other forums, when I've spoken about Canada's international involvement, I can tell you it's not something we need to push. Lots of other countries are interested in collaborating with Canadian researchers and businesses and others. So kudos to you for your work out there in giving Canada a good name in terms of being a partner internationally. So that's been quite a success. We want to highlight how the past and current federal investments are advancing research, talent, and commercialization. So the 3 pillars of the strategy. And we want to define longer term missions. So more about that in a second, which can build on our existing strengths in order to commercialize and develop key quantum technologies. An advisory council has been provided advice, and we'll talk about that in a second, as well as the roadmaps. On the next slide, we talk about the detailed funding. You can see the breakdowns there, 141 million research, the 45 for talent, and 169 for commercialization. And then underneath each of those, you can see the different programs, most under research to the NSERC Alliance grants, a couple of different streams there. The Quantum R&D Initiative, which is an initiative that's not yet been publicly announced on the details, but that will be to support the government's R&D efforts, as well as engaging with academics and others to solve problems within the federal government. On the talent, NSERC Create, as well MyTax, of course, received some quantum-specific funding. Under commercialization, the challenge programs, I saw a couple of colleagues from the NRC on the list here today. Innovative Solutions Canada, which does procurement, the Global Innovation Clusters, and the Regional Development Agencies, or the RDAs. On the next slide over, we have the same list of the programs. What I call attention to on this slide is at the bottom. So you can see that there are other programs that are critical to expanding our strengths, but they weren't provided specific money under the National Quantum Strategies 360. So NRC IRAP, again, on our agenda today, the Business Development Bank of Canada, BDC, IDEAS, the Strategic Innovation Fund, or SIF, CFAR, and the Canada Foundation for Innovation, or CFI. So all of those support quantum programming in a variety of different ways, but they were not provided under the 360. So if one were to tally up the total amount of federal support for quantum in Canada, as you can imagine, the amount will total much more than 360. Over the slide, we talk about in the NQS, the National Quantum Strategy, we have 3 missions. No time today to go into them in any huge detail, but just they're highlighted there for you. Quantum hardware and software. Some countries, call it algorithms. We're calling it software. The purpose there is to make Canada a world leader in the development, deployment, and use of this to the benefit of Canadian industry, governments, and citizens. Then in quantum communications, this is a quantum-enabled national secure network communications, as well as post-quantum cryptography. And then last but certainly not least, in quantum sensors, to enable us to be early adopters of quantum sensor and technologies. So these missions are supported by the dedicated funding that I've mentioned before. You can get more information on them in the National Quantum Strategy document. They will go to guide collaboration between academia, industry, not-for-profit, and government labs. And they will, of course, require government support to de-risk the development of this technology in order to create larger scale projects that ensure Canadian leadership. So now in terms of the next steps, what we have is the road mapping exercises. So those were launched a couple of weeks ago, sort of the end of March, for the 3 missions. The purpose of the road mapping is to say, how do we get to achieve the missions in the strategy? If you'd like to participate those and didn't receive any of the information, or would like to be added to our mailing list, please let me know. So the community input, as it says, is being currently collected. The advisory council, I had mentioned that earlier in the presentation, has 2 co-chairs announced, Dr. Stephanie Simmons and Ray LaFlamme. They were announced at the launch back in January 13th, 2023. The additional council members will be announced shortly. And so that's about the state of play for the NQS. The rest of the slides in the presentation, when you get it, you can see just describe the key quantum technologies, as well as a little bit more detail on each of the roadmaps. But I think that would be a little bit more than would be had at a presentation like this. So maybe with since we're running right on time, I think I have a minute and a half left. Maybe I'll turn it back to the moderators and welcome any questions. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Michael. Right on time, actually. 8 minutes. Fantastic. I don't see any particular questions in the chat pointed. Can I please be added to the road mapping mailing list? Of course, we can relay that. But yeah, assuming there are no further questions in the chat for the moment, let us how we can roll to the next. So it feels like that we have to improvise a little bit. There has been a minor change in the plans with one of our speakers, Scott, having a little bit of a trouble joining in. So we'll perhaps swap basically places. Oh, you're here, Scott, or not?
I am here, yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful, fantastic. Well, thank you so much then for joining. I was just trying to rush and get you the link to the email. I'm glad that you were able to receive that. Thank you so much for joining. So perhaps I'll just start with a brief introduction of Scott, and I'll then hand it off to you, Scott, to talk a little bit to us about the Canadian quantum industry ecosystem. So Scott is the co-founder and former CEO of Isara Corporation, a security solutions company specializing in creating quantum safe cryptography for today's computing systems. Prior to Isara, Scott was Senior Vice President of Enterprise and Security at Huawei, where he launched their R&D office in Waterloo. Scott was also a Senior Vice President at BlackBerry for over 13 years, where he helped shape their security, regulatory compliance, lawful access and privacy strategies on a global scale. Before BlackBerry, Scott was a senior consultant with EDS, building technological expertise and leadership experience in network security architecture and database design. Scott is joining us today as interim executive director of Quantum Industry Canada, QIC. We are all ears. Scott, take it away. We'd love to hear a little bit more about QIC, and I understand there are no decks, so we'll be all ears listening to you.
Well, thanks. Hopefully I can have my presentation last about as long as your intro. So I'm relatively new to QIC, about 6 weeks. For those of you who don't know, Quantum Industry Canada started about 4 years ago with kind of a goal to create an industry association where we can kind of aggregate the voice of all of the smaller quantum startups and the scale-ups in the quantum industry, and really have a focus that was purely on commercialization and how do we help this ecosystem grow and thrive both domestically and internationally. And up until the beginning of March, this was purely a volunteer organization. We had very limited budget, no real resources to do anything, some heroic effort from the folks on the board and other interested parties. But we now have some funding for the next 3 years. We're looking to scale up staffing, so a permanent executive director, some communications and marketing folks, and some other business development capability to grow our membership and help kind of spread the word about what the Canadian ecosystem can do, as I said, domestically and internationally. We've recently entered into an MOU to continue that sort of cooperation with our counterparts in Japan, the EU and the US. So we've got a 4-way MOU in place. And really what we want to do is find a way to help everybody in this ecosystem survive, grow, as I said, grow the membership, and then provide services like this. We have working groups that we're starting to define. One of them is an IP strategy group. So this is quite important to how we want to see QIC fit into the ecosystem as sort of an industry association, and then help get this information out to our members and build programs that will support their businesses, and take that road mapping exercise that's going on in Canada and extend that with we're currently working on a sort of supply chain mapping. So what are the different components available in Canada from all of the different partners that we have in the ecosystem, pair that with our international partners, and then use it as a way to find business opportunities outside of Canada. I think a really timely example will be at the G7 Science and Technology Summit next month in Japan, where QIC will be presenting with actual slides this time, a broader vision of the Canadian roadmap and what we're doing, and highlighting that on kind of an international stage. So early days, those of you who are on the mailing list should have seen an announcement for this. We're also going to have I guess, a general meeting for all of our members looking like mid-June. So you should see something in the next week or so on that. And that's about all I have. That I'm relatively new to the organization and sort of a late addition to the agenda. So I apologize for not having a robust slide deck in place.
Oh, no apologies needed. Scott, thank you so much. That was a very condensed intro. Welcome to QIC, I suppose. And we definitely look forward at Mitex to working with you and QIC in the future. It's all exciting, all the development in that agency. Thank you so much for scrambling to join and filling for one of your colleagues. Really appreciate you taking the time. And obviously, we'll just relay any questions coming down in the chat your way as well. Thank you. With that, I guess, Lisa, we can put you on the spot a bit earlier and ahead of schedule. Hopefully you are all there and you can just go on camera as well, and I'll make the brief intro before handing it over to you. Do we have you, Lisa?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Excellent. So my next colleague joining us today as a speaker, and this is not Lisa, obviously, this is Lisa. Lisa Desjardins. She is a manager of business services design and development with Canadian Intellectual Property Office, CIPO. At CIPO, she develops informative material helping Canadians better understand and use intellectual property. She has over 10 years of experience from the commercialization of early stage research in the public sector and 10 years of experience from the private sector, where she managed projects to develop and implement IT systems, product supply chains, and service delivery in Sweden, Australia, and Canada. Her MBA studies and offering as a consultant focused on the evaluation of early stage research and patents. A passionate learner, Lisa is currently pursuing a master's in IP law. That's quite exciting, Lisa. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We are all ears to hear about all the exciting stuff at CIPO, particularly around protecting the valuable IP developed here in Canada at home. The floor is yours, Lisa. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank
And
you.
I'll
Thank you
flip
so much
over
for
the slides.
Thank you for the introduction, Iman, and thank you to Mitex for inviting CIPO to this very exciting event. I think the previous speakers, such as Michael, you mentioned that it is important to have a more nuanced discussion about IP. And that, I think, requires a better awareness of intellectual property. And that's exactly why I'm here today. But before I begin, I thought maybe I just want to recognize which territory we're on, and that the Indigenous peoples are the traditional stewards of the land and waters where we're meeting today. And I want to respectfully acknowledge that we're working on different Indigenous lands that have been inhabited by the Indigenous peoples from the beginning. I'm joining you from the Ottawa-Gatineau region, and so I'm on the unceded traditional territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. So thank you for that. We can proceed to the next slide. So I'm going to talk about the IP awareness and education program, or the directorate that we represent here. And I'm also going to talk about the IP Village, because we have a group that is across the federal government, and we work with a lot of the speakers actually that you will hear from today. So some of the partners that Michael showed you will be are also part of the work that we do. So why are we doing this? Well, because we are Canada's IP office. We're at the very core of Canada's IP system. If you look at our priorities, we deliver patents and trademarks, industrial designs, and other IP rights. And of course, our IP education and awareness material draws from this experience. Second priority is that we actually have a mandate to foster innovation. And that's why we have our IP awareness and education program, so we can offer free and neutral starting points for people that want to understand IP. And for the third point there, CIPO is geared to be a high-performing organization. So we're shifting to more online interactions like the one today, and we offer on-demand tools and recordings to fit the new and busy schedules of people today. If you proceed to the next slide, please. So in the high-tech sector, we know that around 90% of a company's market value can be represented by know-how and trade secrets and inventions and brands. So investors, they pay for this stuff. They're interested in it. But to build this kind of intellectual capital, we need to be much more aware of intellectual property and how to protect it. And to us, it's a big ask because 82% of companies actually say that they don't own IP. Now, of course, we know that that's not true because I would imagine that they have a company name, maybe a website, maybe some contracts. And so we know that's not true. But the scary thing is that these companies probably haven't asked themselves the two most important questions that they need to ask themselves when it comes to IP. And the first question is, how do you know you're not copying someone else's IP? And the second question is, what are you going to do when someone is copying yours? So we know that 42% don't even know IP, that they openly admit that they don't know IP. And only 7% of the companies sought IP information. And this is from the latest IP awareness and use survey, which included 16,000 companies across Canada. So it's a very good survey. So this low awareness is it's a known problem that you may have heard about, and maybe you've worked with some of the initiatives that we're very lucky to have in Canada and that you have on the speakers today. So, I mean, some of them target growth companies and have funds towards advanced and specific education needs. The way we fit in there is that, well, we have a free products and services that are a great starting point, even for people that are trying to apply for these programs. So you can always use our IP awareness and education services. And there are also programs for those who are somewhat aware of IP and they have business maybe looking to grow and looking for government funding. And then our services are a good starting point to take stock of your IP and learn how to apply and talk about your IP as you apply for these programs. And then we have the big what's under the tip of that iceberg, the unaware. And these are the pre-startups, the researchers and entrepreneurs, and maybe some of the people in this audience are part of them. And for these, we try to reach out just like we're doing today. And we want to welcome people to use our products and services. And essentially, what we're trying to do here is to make sure that all the investments that the previous speakers are talking about, we're going to get return for those. Next slide. So I wanted to show you some of the businesses that we do and how we do it. So what we have in our program is basically we take our clients through the different steps. We explain what IP is. We can help them identify their IP. We explain how to protect IP and how to manage IP. And of course, because we don't provide specific advice, we don't fill in application forms and so on, but we tell them where to find help. And the way we do this is through online. So we have canada.ca/IP for business as our website, to the go-to site. We offer webinars and seminars online, and you can also meet with an IP advisor who is a free of charge service that we offer to entrepreneurs and creators across Canada. So I'm not going to go through all of the products, but I just wanted to give you a flavor for what kind of things that you can find when you come to our website and when you visit our seminars. To begin with, we offer a lot of different fact sheets. And the most popular one is an IP inventory where we help people identify their IP. We also have roadmaps, so we can explain, the way to protection, the way to gain protection. We have also a self-assessment tool. If you're thinking about IP strategy, then you're asked some questions about where you are in your IP journey, and you're actually getting a reply back from the machine with a custom report for you and helps you create a default position on your IP ownership. We also have videos where you learn step by step about strategy, commercialization, and IP abroad. And of course, we're very proud to offer personal assistance through our IP advisors. These are people with years of experience offering free and confidential discussion to guide you to your next step in your IP journey. Next slide. We also have a suite of e-learning courses. These are self-study courses on a range of topics where you can learn about IP overall, if you want to study perhaps trademarks or patents in specific. This is a great way to start at your own convenience with bite-sized information while you progress to learn more about IP. And again, the IP awareness across Canada is very low. There's no shame in not knowing. So our place is a good start to learn on your own before you have a conversation with someone else about your IP. Next slide. We also have other digital tools and services. One is, for example, the Canadian IP Voices podcast. This is a relatively recent product line that we've launched, and we are about to publish our 27th episode of our podcast. And in these podcasts, we have interviews with key players across the IP ecosystem where we explain basically how IP works. And so we've had experts talking about how to protect the training data in, for example, AI systems. We talk about open source. We had chat GPT discussion in our last episode. I think for this audience, it could be good to know that we've also interviewed our own patent examiners, and they give two interviews in there that I would say that are specific to anyone considering a patent. Really, really good points and examples and even ideas on where to learn more on patents from those interviews. Next slide. And then, of course, we have the national webinars, which we offer on a range of different topics. We offer these webinars usually every second week. It depends on our other activities, but the webinars are usually about an hour long, and they offer an interactive platform. So we spice it up a little bit to interact with the audience, and you can, of course, ask questions to whoever is given that presentation. And we offer everything in our 2 official languages. Next slide. So we've spent considerable time at developing our suite of about 130 bilingual products. And of course, we're very proud to offer these and engage with key partners in the IP ecosystem. So that's why we have an outreach team who are working on establishing and strengthening both national and regional partnerships. And we attend events and trade shows. And of course, we're also working to increase outreach to the startup audience. And so voila, here's an open invitation for you to connect with us. This is what we do. We have a mandate to do it, and we do it for free. So hey, if you want to learn IP, make sure you keep in touch with us. We're also working on something called the IP Village, and I just want to spend a few minutes explaining a little bit more what that is. Next slide. So IP is a crucial business tool at all stages of companies' development. So to help Canadian small and medium enterprise businesses better with IP and understanding IP, we've joined with the leading organizations in Canada to create what we call the IP Village. And that's a result of a collaboration between the Business Development Bank of Canada, of course, CIPO, we've got Export Development Canada, Global Affairs Canada's Trade Commissioner Service is also there. We're joined by the IP Institute of Canada, and NRC IRAB is also part of it. And of course, ISED. And at the moment, we're in actually one session in launching a series of webinars where we are kind of extending the IP Village a little bit further. So we have presenters from the Privacy Commissioner, we've got Health Canada, we've got the Standards Council of Canada. So when you're in touch with these organizations, just know that they are in touch with CIPO. If there are questions about IP during these conversations, we have a referral process so that they would then ask you to contact, or they would even actually forward your questions to our advisors who will contact you. Next slide. So last year, the IP Village launched and concluded a series of webinars, and that was 5 different webinars that would take the audience through the entire life cycle of IP. So it started off with protecting IP and how to use it in your business. We were talking about different funding opportunities, and of course, doing business abroad, where we had conversations with trade commissioners, and they gave specific insights on how to protect IP in Europe and in China and in the US. And last point was defending your IP rights. All of these are recorded, and I think this slide maybe have some old numbers. I know that there are more 4,000 views on them right now. But visit our YouTube page if you want to learn about IP and you want to hear it from the experts. These are top-notch lawyers that we've got on the webinars, as well as the trade commissioners with deep insights into exactly how things work in their countries. So yeah, please go to our YouTube page and find that out. The IP Village also has a LinkedIn page, so you can follow us on LinkedIn, where we are sharing not just CIPO's activities, but anything that our partner is doing in relation to IP. We try to channel it there because we know that typically a lot of our followers for the regular CIPO channel is lawyers and things. So we're trying to filter out the things that are just for SMEs, and we put it on our LinkedIn page. So at the moment, we're doing the IP Insights series, which is a panel discussions, a series of panel discussions. And if you've missed the first one, don't worry, we have recorded that and we will launch the recording in the summer. The next panel is on, well, next week actually, on consumer products. And so these are a range of different technologies, perhaps not super specific for a quantum audience, but it is basically where we feature a company and we ask the company's questions. Their IP lawyer is on, the representative from BDC is on and explains what it is with this company that made BDC make the decision to fund them. And of course, we talk about regulations and so on. So this is how we roll at CIPO. We try to find different angles to work and explore IP and kind of unpack IP in simple and plain language so that people know what to do next. So that concludes my presentation. And in the deck, we also have a lot of different links to resources. And again, there's absolutely no shame in not knowing IP. That's what we're here for. And I think in the chat, I will just share our link to our kind of a homepage or the home section on the CIPO webpage where we have our products. So that concludes my presentation. It's a little bit short, but I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lisa. It was fantastic. Always learning a lot about CIPO, and you were right on time, left actually about 5 minutes for questions. And we do have questions actually coming more that we can take right now. So Nadia is asking a couple of questions. Number one, would you mind telling what would be specific about quantum IP that needs more attention, I suppose, than a regular IP that you're coming across? Do you see any nuances, any differences, any things that demand special attention to quantum IP?
I think I can't answer specifically to quantum IP, but I think one of the things that I've seen from any early stage technology is the need to understand what is already out there. Because the way the language is made in patents, it is a protection of a solution. And if you have a good patent, you've described a solution generic enough to be quite broad. So you need to know what kind of patents are out there already and understand who the main players are, who the main researchers are, and who they work for and how they work. If they are very protective, if they're going to go after companies, if they try to do something that sort of resembles anything. So it's not very specific to quantum IP because I'm not immersed in those technologies, but I think it's important to start looking at what is already out there in terms of IP and understand. And it's actually going down to the very depth of reading those patents, having somebody reading those patents and understand what they say and interpret them, what it means for your way going forward. One thing about patents is when you apply for a patent, it has to be new in the world. Even if a patent is not granted, that knowledge has been laid open to the public, and so you cannot patent what is already said, what is already made known. So having that sort of foresight into what is the kind of white space, if you want, or freedom to operate is essential to anyone starting with new and emerging technologies.
Excellent, fantastic. Thank you for that. Hope that answered the question. The second question that I have here is how ITAR policy impacts IP development.
So for that question, I think I need to have a clarification on that abbreviation ITAR.
Whomever is asking the question, I'm not sure if we can open the mic, but I believe it's pertaining to the US export limitations. Let me just very quickly. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, well, is that international traffic in arms regulations, or is that relevant here, the ITAR policy?
US ITAR. I'd like to take that question with me then. Yeah, I'd like to take that question with me then. It's probably something that is more related to US specific rights.
Yeah.
So
it is the US ITAR, definitely. Yes.
Okay.
There was that clarification for sure.
Yeah.
We'll then capture this question to whomever is asking, and we'll relay back with answers. Certainly. For sure. Yeah. And one last question that I have here, and we still got a few minutes. Do you fund individual IPs, or it should be a corporate IP, having a corporation status behind it? Not sure if I interpret the question properly, but
so I can give a general reply to that. That CIPO does not fund anything. We are a revolving fund under ISAD, which means that actually our salaries are paid by the people with IP rights in Canada or applying for IP rights in Canada, which is the majority is actually not Canadians. So to keep that in mind. Yeah, it's we don't provide funding, but if you are looking for funding, have a conversation with our IP advisors because they're very, very well versed in the systems and they can probably help you find something that can become a funding opportunity for you.
Absolutely. And it goes to show that your session has been super engaging because 2 more questions just popped in the chat, Lisa. And I guess we can take them because we're still ahead of schedule a little bit, if you don't mind. So the first one is rather specific. It says, does CIPO examiners have the requisite expertise to assess basically quantum-based patent applications? What trainings do you offer internally to keep the examiners up to speed, given that quantum space is fast evolving? That's a relevant question.
Okay, let's see here. I'm not seeing the same. Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, that's in the main chat, actually, the webinar chat.
Okay.
So
yeah. Would you mind reading the question again? Because I can see different questions here.
Absolutely. So basically, it asks about the trainings that you provide to your examiners at CIPO around quantum specific technologies.
Yeah.
Given that the segment is so fast moving, what are some of those expertise?
Absolutely. So I can tell you that our examiners are the bleeding front edge of technologies because they receive all of these applications. And when they receive the applications, they do the search for whatever someone else has applied for as well. So yes, I would have great confidence in the examiner's understanding of this. It goes for any field. I mean, this is where new inventions end up. First and foremost. So we have a system of examiners and the way they collaborate between themselves to continuously learn about new technologies.
Absolutely. And one last question that I see that we can take, given the time frame, is a question from Lewis in the chat. First of all, obviously, thanking you for a very informative session. Even as a trademark and patent holder, your presentation was helpful. Thank you. Our products are available via the web, and so we have clients all over the world. Therefore, my primary IP concerns are ensuring IP protection globally. Consultants have recommended that we always start by filing with USPTO, not CIPO, because CIPO recognizes USPTO patents, but USPTO does not recognize CIPO patents. In your experience, is that accurate?
Yes, thank you for the question, Louis. This is a question we get a lot. I think the confusion is because the patent has to be new in the world, people automatically think once you get that patent, you have that patent in the world. But that's not how it works because every country is different. So it depends on jurisdiction where you have applied for that patent protection. Imagine if something goes wrong with that patent, you're only suing in that jurisdiction. So absolutely, that's why people take a look at where their biggest market is and where they think that they absolutely need protection the most. And typically that is, where are you going to sell these things? Where are you going to manufacture these things? Where are you going to ship them? What's the shipping route for these? Where do you think your competitors are going to try to copy your thing and export it so that you can stop them right at the customs? So that's absolutely accurate. You've been given the good advice from whoever you got that from. You need to look at all the kinds of jurisdictions that are pertaining to your particular product line.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Louis, for the question. I trust that answered your question. Thank you so much, Lisa, for a fantastic session and engaging. If there are any other questions, we'll just relay them to you. For sure, I don't see any at the moment. There's one that I could potentially take it that's pertaining to my tax.
I'll be staying here as well, so anyone can fire me a private question in the chat. I don't mind.
Beautiful. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Obviously, moving on, and you're right on time. I'm quite happy with that. So off to our next speaker, Reda Damu. Reda is going to talk to us about Explore IP, another program available by our colleagues in the government at ISET. Reda himself is a mechanical engineer and currently leading the outreach and partnership efforts at Explore IP. That is within Innovation Science and Economic Development Canada, or ISET. Reda, whenever you're ready, please come online and the floor is yours. I'll just roll over the deck.
Thank you very much for having us. We're very happy to be able to present to you guys about our program. So the program is called, if you don't know about it already, it's called Explore IP, and we call it Canada's Intellectual Property Marketplace. So you can go ahead and to the next slide, please. So what is Explore IP? Explore IP, in simple words, it's a database that was created in order for us to be able to promote intellectual property assets that are held by public sector institutions. So as you will see during my presentation, the purpose of the tool that we created is really to promote the IP that is developed within various public sector institutions across the country, and to make that IP available for private sector industry in order for them to be able to build bridges and to create collaboration projects. So that really the intent is to simplify the means that industry is able to search through this one centralized database in order to find IP that was developed and held by public sector institutions across the country. So next slide, please. So here's just a quick summary of our mandate, just to make it, kind of get the point across. So the intent is really to simplify the way that businesses across the country are able to find that existing IP, understand it, and have the easiest possible way for them to connect directly with the IP holders. So our IP holders, as you will see in later slides, are public sector institutions across the country that do R&D. So you may already have different ways of connecting with them. You can search through their websites, for example, if it's a university, and see the type of projects that they develop. If you're familiar with specific researchers, you can go through their own portfolio. You can find based on research papers, etc. What we did is really, like I said, to simplify the work, is that we centralized that information for these Canadian public sector institutions. So instead of you having to search through every single university page or university website or government agency, for instance, you're able to find all of that information summarized on our database. So next slide, please. So the benefits of Explore IP for businesses, like I said, the intent is really to have that centralized information. So when you go into the website, which I strongly encourage every single participant to go after the presentation or during the presentation if you have the time right now, and you can search using different ways. It's very user friendly, so it's very easy for you to kind of get familiar with it. So by searching using keywords or using our different categories of inventions, you're able to land onto, this is an example of a results page. So you can find the various opportunities based on your specific field of research. Obviously, in this case, we're talking about quantum, and there are plenty of quantum technologies that are available. Some of them developed by NRC, who are speaking here with us today. So once you find those opportunities, if you click on any of the opportunities that is listed in the screenshot that you see available here, you're able to connect directly with the institution that has developed that IP or that holds that IP. Like I said, you have a list of detailed here, quick list of those solutions. Once you get in touch with them, you're able to start, your conversation as to how you can collaborate in order for you to leverage that existing IP. So you can either license the IP, or you could speak into, you could negotiate different means of collaboration that you could work with them based on your specific field of research and expertise, and how, what you bring to the table, what they can bring to the table, etc. What we added recently is in these type of fields that are very new, where there's innovations that are happening on a regular basis, we added two options that you see on top of that screenshot. So the Save Your Search, the green button that you see up there, it's a means for you. So the platform, like I said earlier, it's a free platform. It's a database that is available publicly. However, if you want, you can save your search if you're looking for a specific type of innovation that could potentially complement some of the work that you're doing yourself. And it's not currently available when you do your search. So you're able to save that search and receive notifications based on the specific search criteria that you would have inputted into the search bar and the selections on the left-hand side. And every time there's a new opportunity that is added, you'd be receiving a notification in order to notify you of that newly added opportunity. Now, these opportunities, every single one of our IP holders manages their own portfolio, so they're able to update new opportunities on a regular basis. So that's why, like I said, this button here could be of great benefit for you to keep up to date on those opportunities. The second button that is up there, it's called the collaboration button, and that's a means for businesses to present their own challenges to our public sector institutions, so to our partners on the public side. So if you have a specific technological challenge that you're going through in order to produce your product, or to improve your product, to have an add-on to your product, etc., you're able to fill out that form, and based on the technology areas that are available on the platform, we would be able to connect you with a public sector institution that could potentially work with you in order to solve that specific technological challenge. Now, you can also do the same thing, do it by yourself by scanning through the research organizations. And if you are aware of a specific researcher or a specific research organization that you could work with, you can connect with them as well directly through the research organization tab on the top. But the collaboration button allows us to have a general understanding of what the technological challenge is, and we can share that information ourselves with those IP holders, those public sector IP holders, and then they can reach out to you if they are able to collaborate with you on that specific challenge. So next slide, please. So when it comes to our IP holders that I've been speaking about since the beginning, we have 62 of them in total. The big majority of them are universities, public sector, post-secondary institutions, but we also have research and development agencies across the public sector, so NRC being one example. We also have hospitals and various not-for-profits as well. But it's important to understand that it's a national website, so we have institutions from across the country that are listed on the website. Next slide, please. So finally, I just wanted to leave you with this, just a quick summary of kind of where we're at. So the technology areas, we have 46 of them, and those technology areas are based on WIPO's WIPO is the World Intellectual Property Office. So we refer to them in order to create these technology areas to categorize all the innovations that are on the website. You're able to search if you don't have a specific technological challenge that you're trying to solve, you're able to search based on those technology areas as well, in order to kind of have an idea of what are the opportunities available in these areas, and kind of do a search in that, like a more broad search that way. So like I said earlier, we have 62 different IP holders that are listed on the platform, and altogether they have over 5,000 different opportunities. So far, we've received a little over 360 different contact requests. So those are in businesses that would have reached out to our IP holders in order to build a connection and to find ways to collaborate based on those intellectual property assets. And some of those conversations are actually in negotiations right now in between the parties. And finally, we are doing our best in order to spread the word about the platform to businesses across the country. So we're trying like I said, making an effort, like today, for instance, in order for us for the industry, to be aware of the existence of these solutions and to start leveraging these existing opportunities, and to build collaborations with our public sector institutions. So the next slide, which is the final slide, gives you the website, which is very straightforward, canada.ca/explore IP. And I'd be very happy to answer questions if there are any right now, or you can always reach out to us at exploreip@canada.ca to follow up after this presentation. Thank you very much. Hopefully I fit within the time. Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Rita. Perfectly in time. And we do have time for a couple of questions. We're essentially 3 minutes ahead. I actually see none currently in the chat or in the question board. Just give it a couple of minutes. Well, thank you all for your attention so far. Thanks to all the speakers up to this point. At the moment, we're going to take a quick 5-minute bio break. We'll be back at 2:05 sharp. You won't want to miss the next segment, essentially. So the 3 funding programs with active funding opportunities around IP and IP protection will be speaking, followed by our industry panel. You'll be hearing from some of your colleagues in the ecosystem, in the for-profit ecosystem, to basically talk about their experiences with IP and their approaches to protect their IPs. So you won't want to miss the next segment. We're going to just stay on this link, and we'll be back and resume the next speaking schedule at 2:05. We'll see you in a bit. Thank you so much. Okay. Hello, everyone. So we're back on schedule, 2:05. Hope you managed to grab a glass of water or refresh your coffee. There will be another 3 engaging segments starting right away. I'm going to introduce our next speaker, who has kindly joined us today to talk about the IP Assist program. Rula Thomas is a registered Canadian and US patent agent since 2001 and has been practicing IP law for over 20 years in both private practice and in-house. Rula has a master's in biochemistry, and her agency practice focuses on biotechnology, immunology, and the life sciences. Rula has been in-house with NRC since 2016 as a senior member and lead of the IP team, and is currently the director of IP Assist program at NRC IRAP. Prior to leading IP Assist program, Rula worked in private practice at a leading multinational law firms, advising on supporting the IP portfolios of large R&D organizations, academic institutions, as well as SMEs, the small and medium enterprises. In addition to providing strategic advice on IP to various organizations, Rula has helped build education materials, strategic IP frameworks, and has helped SMEs leverage their innovations for growth. Thank you so much, Rula, for attending the session today and for talking to us about IP Assist program. The floor is all yours to walk us through the IP Assist program at IRAP.
Thank you so much, Iman. Thank you to you and your team for inviting me. It's always my pleasure to speak to SMEs and to my colleagues about all the great work we're doing at NRC IRAP. Before I get into IP Assist, I think I'll just speak very briefly on IRAP. Most of you on this call would have heard of IRAP. We've been doing some exceptional work. There's no other program like ours, and we've been doing this great work for over 75 years. We actually just celebrated our 76th. So IRAP, I'll just say a few words. Our formula here at IRAP is to really support firms over time. We want to support firms and at the right time and the right companies to make sure that they are growing. And that's what we do. We want to help them de-risk their innovation costs. We co-invest in their growth, and we invest very heavily in their development. There are basic eligibilities for IRAP firms, and so we work with incorporated Canadian SMEs that are operating in Canada that have fewer than 500 employees. So our hope is that many of the firms we work with will graduate and grow out of our fold. And our objective is to help them grow through innovation. So I'll just say a few words up on the slide here of some of the great work that we do. IRAP is not just a funding body. although that is one of the things that we do provide great advisory services. There is a network of over 250 ITAs, which are industry technology advisors. These are highly skilled professionals in business, retired CEOs and leads of companies that work with IRAP and our SMEs to really help them grow. And these ITAs leverage a suite of innovative services to help SMEs grow. Our mandate is to stimulate wealth creation for Canada through innovation. Our mission is to do this by accelerating growth for our SMEs. And we really want to make sure that we position Canadian SMEs for commercial success. And we all know here on this call that IP is a big lever for that commercial success for innovative firms. We support over 8,000 SMEs annually. And like I said, we give them not only funding, really guided advice and connections and support to make sure that they are growing and drawing benefit to Canada. Next slide, please. Yeah, so IP Assist. So IP Assist is a program that was launched in budget 2021 with my colleague Nicole, who I think is going to be speaking to you about Elevate IP. But IP Assist is a program that really helps and is geared towards NRC IRAP firms and IRAP eligible firms that we can help them grow by providing 3 levels of service and advice. We understand that IP is a tool, is a business tool. I certainly have done this in my private, my professional life before IP Assist, but innovative firms have IP, and what are they doing with that IP for their growth? How are they leveraging it? How are they making sure that they've de-risked, certain dangers around that IP? What are they doing to safeguard it, and what are they doing to leverage it for their growth? And so IP Assist is looking to just that, and we do it in 3 different ways. Next slide, please. So these are the 3 levels that we help our firms with. The first level is IP awareness. We understand that there are a lot of firms, and Lisa gave the stats earlier, a lot of SMEs know that IP is something that's important and something that they need to be mindful of, but they view it as complicated, expensive, they don't know where to start. And part of the challenge and part of what we're doing here is to make sure that we're giving SMEs the right level of IP awareness. We sometimes start, and we've been working with CIPO and to leverage some of the great resources they've been doing. So we will send them to the CIPO resources and provide those links. But we know that IRAP's SMEs are sometimes, they need more. And so we've developed IP awareness training and sessions for our SMEs that bring to the table an IP professional in their industry to have these conversations. I'll talk a little bit more about that. So IP awareness is the first pillar. IP strategy, we help our companies build IP strategies, and then we help them deliver on those actions. And I'll go into each of these 3 levels in more detail. So here's the IP awareness bit. We want to make sure that our firms not only understand what IP is, we want them to understand what IP they do have and how they can transform that IP, those innovations, into valuable assets. There are, of course, many companies who see IP as patents, and IP is more than patents. We work with all industries here at IRAP, and so there are some companies that are going to be more patent averse, and some that are going to, be more looking at trade secrets. What do they need to be aware of? What are the things they need to be cautious with? And so part of that awareness is to making sure that we're speaking to the company with their industry's lens in mind. Next slide, please. So this is part of the discussion that happens, and these are sort of the questions that we want to ask in those sessions. The IP professional that is engaged will ask the questions that get the SMEs. So we have leaders from the SMEs that are joining these IP awareness sessions, and we want to ask them, do you know your technology? Do you know the state of your art? How can you find out about your competitors. What do your customers actually want? How are you improving? How can you capitalize on your innovations and move them forward? So understanding IP and linking it to our SME specific technology is important part of that discussion. Next slide, please. Likewise, business is really important. One of the major things that I wanted to bring to this program is to link IP to business. IP is not just this abstract thing that people need to be aware of. It's a business tool. And how are our firms using their innovations, converting them to IP that they can actually leverage? And so understanding business IP to be a business tool, we need to understand the business goals of our firms. They need to understand their market, their competitors, why they are different, what can disrupt them. And so we really try to raise that level of awareness. Next slide, please. And then the pinnacle of that triangle, once you've understood your technology, the questions that related to your technology in your business, you really need to ask some very important questions with respect to IP. And so asking, how can I use my innovations for business? How can I use my IP to secure investment? How can I grow? What is my IP strategy? A lot of people think they have an IP strategy or say they have an IP strategy, but it's really just some sort of, abstract one line, like we need to file a patent for X. Well, that's not an IP strategy. That's like a one line on an IP strategy. So thinking about what an IP strategy is and how that can help support your business is part of the conversation that we want to make sure our SMEs are engaged in. Next slide, please. So level 2, this is I would say the main meat of our program, because it really is something that our firms have are really digesting well and are leveraging to help them make some real, I hate to use the word strategy when I'm describing IP strategy, but to really make some purposeful decisions that are going to have a significant impact for them in the long term. So one of the things that we wanted to make sure was clear to our firms is that an IP strategy needs to support your business goals. So we help in level 2, after we've given our firms some awareness, we really help our SMEs develop an IP strategy that supports their business goals. We have linked IP strategy not just to IP, like what do I need to file? What do my competitors have filed? We really linked it to their technology, their business goals, and the market around them. So developing an IP strategy through IP Assist answers some very important questions, provides a very important to-do list or prioritized action plan that is going to help our companies translate their technology into IP and leverage that IP for business growth. And that's what the strategy aims to do. And so we're doing that with our SMEs, and our ITAs are involved in that process. And we bring in third-party IP experts in each of our firms' industries to help build these IP strategies. Next slide, please. Likewise, we can go over these next 3 slides, I think, relatively quickly, but like IP awareness, we really want to make sure that IP strategy is informed by 3 very important things. The first is the business. So I can't build an IP strategy. And when I was in-house with several companies that I've worked with and in private practice, if I'm going to build an IP strategy for a firm, I really need to understand the business of that company. Who are their competitors? What is the product or service that they're looking to offer? What is that innovation that they want to leverage? What is their market space? So we need to get that information. And when we build an IP strategy, we make sure that we are delivering that information to our firms. What's your market? Who are your competitors? What do you need to know? And then for technology, we help leverage service providers that are going to provide a technology landscape assessment. So you got your business landscape. What's your technology landscape? Where do you fit in? How are you better? How are you, competing with your competitors, and maybe who are your potential collaborators. So looking at the technology landscape really helps inform an IP strategy. Next slide, please. And then we build an IP strategy based on that very important, those very important pieces of information. And we want to make sure that the IP strategy isn't just a list of things you need to do. It really needs to be a list of things that are relevant to your business through the IP lens. So that's what the IP strategy aims to do. Again, technology, business, and IP are sort of the three pillars that support the IP strategy that we're looking to build for our firms. Maybe before I move forward, I usually have in some of these, some of these presentations that I do, I usually have a garden slide, and I say, this is my garden slide on IP strategy, because I really want companies to know that an IP strategy isn't a one-off thing. It's not something you do once and sort of file away. An IP strategy is very much like a garden that needs to be pruned and revisited. And you really need to make sure that the things you're growing and investing in are things that are going to return a very positive investment. So IP strategies, like we have many companies that do in fact have an IP strategy, but it's become stagnant. It doesn't speak to their current pipeline or their current commercial goals. So we want to make sure that our companies are refreshing and making sure that their IP strategy is working for them. Next slide. So these are some of the things that an IP strategy should flag, looking at how company assesses disclosures, making sure that contracts, employment agreements, for example, take into account that the company does in fact own its IP, own its innovations. So these are just some of the things that an IP strategy might inform. There's obviously several more, but these are some of the ones that we know are very material to most industries. And then lastly, for our more advanced firms, we really help them deliver on some of the prioritized IP actions that they've defined. Do they need to, review some collaborative agreements that involve IP? Do they need to do a patentability analysis for, against a specific inventor, a specific competitor, or for a specific innovation pipeline? These are the actions that we help at level 3. So over these 3 levels, NRC, IRAP through IP Assist really aims to support our innovative firms, and we have several of them across all industries to raise that level of awareness beyond just a webinar. We start there, but we really want to make sure that we're having very specific conversations to develop an IP strategy that is relevant and valuable for their commercial growth, and to execute on prioritized IP actions that are really important for the company to grow. So IP Assist really is geared towards the IRAP firm or IRAP eligible firms. For IRAP eligible firms that are not ready for IRAP, or they're not currently in the IRAP fold, we do collaborate very well with our partners, CIPO, Elevate IP, and other partners in government IP, and we make sure that we are sending them to get the right kind of love that they need from those partners. But if you are an IRAP client, I would encourage you to reach out to your ITA, ask them for some information on IP Assist. They will certainly encourage you to, take advantage of our high-level IP awareness, sitting down with an IP professional. They might encourage you to develop an IP strategy. If you are not an IRAP firm and you'd like to get more information, there's the number that you can call. And I think the last slide after this has my email and potentially a link. Yeah, there it is. And I thank you very much. I think we have 2 minutes for questions.
Precisely. Thank you so much, Willa. It's a fantastic session. I'm going to just open the floor for questions if there are any. I see none in the chat at the moment or in the Q&A session. I have to say that for me, this session has been a lovely refresher. I mean, having worked with NRC, our colleagues, and different programs, it is just amazing to see the level of support that exists within different branches of the government. And I hope our corporate audience here today appreciate the level of support that is available. I do encourage you guys to definitely get in touch with colleagues at IRAP and other programs that you will hear about today. So going to give another minute or so for any popping questions. I see none at the moment. And I'm happy that you're right on time, which is fantastic.
That's great. And while I won't be here for the full time, if there's anybody that wants to email me directly with additional questions, please feel free to do so. I'll answer your question or make the connection that's needed.
Absolutely, we appreciate that. And as a housekeeping reminder, for whomever might have joined a bit later, we will share this full deck with the audience, with the attendees of this webinar. So you will have access to the contact information of my colleagues in these different programs. Okay, seeing no questions and to keep us on time and on schedule, I would like to move on to our next speaker, Nicole Vigneault. She's Acting Director, Intellectual Property Directorate at Innovation Canada, a division within the Innovation Science and Economic Development Canada, or ISED. So a little bit about Nicole. Nicole has worked in the IP field for more than 12 years, both within the public and private sectors. Before joining Innovation Canada, she worked within the Copyright Policy Directorate at Canadian Heritage, where she helped to develop and introduce legislative changes to the Copyright Act in 2018. Before joining the public sector, Nicole practiced as an IP lawyer at Golding WLG, doing trademark and copyright litigation and prosecution between 2011 and 2017. She holds a bachelor's degree in psychology from Queen's University and a law degree from the University of Ottawa. Thank you so much, Nicole, for joining us today to talk a little bit about Elevate IP program. The floor is yours, and I'll be more than happy to control the slides for you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting us to participate today. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge that in this virtual environment, I am presenting to you from Ottawa, which is on the unceded traditional territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people, and I am non-Indigenous. So during today's session, I will be speaking only in English, but we have shared our slides in French with the organizers, et je peux également les partager directement avec toute personne intéressée. N'hésitez pas à me faire savoir dans le chat si vous souhaitez une copie des diapos en français. So as Iman noted during his introduction, I am the acting director of the Intellectual Property Directorate with Innovation Canada, which houses 3 different IP-related programs. We have Elevate IP, Explore IP, and an internal to government program called the IP Center of Expertise. So my wonderful colleague Reda Demu already presented before the break about one of our other programs, Explore IP, which I'll just echo what he said. It's an excellent tool to help companies discover valuable public sector IP opportunities for licensing and collaboration opportunities. And I do strongly encourage you all to check it out. It's a really cool tool. However, I am here today to talk to you about one of our newest programs, Elevate IP. And I am also joined by 2 of my team members, Kate McElroy and Laura Cook, in case there are any questions that I can't answer. So as we go along, please do feel free to ask questions in the chat, and I am also happy to answer questions at the end of the presentation. So just for a bit of background, actually, previous slide, please. So just for a bit of background, why do we care about IP? Why is the government investing so heavily in IP in recent years? So as many of the previous speakers have already highlighted, we all know IP is a key component to enable the growth and competitiveness of high potential firms. Data shows us that SMEs that effectively exploit IP are more likely to be innovative, they're more likely to expand domestically and internationally, they're more likely to attract investment and to experience high growth. But unfortunately, too few Canadian firms have a formal IP strategy, somewhere around 4%, and too few firms seek out professional advice to develop one. And we also know that many firms forgo the protection of their IP due to the involved costs, limited IP knowledge, as well as other issues. So for startups in particular, which is the ultimate audience of the Elevate IP program, the failure to develop an IP strategy, to understand how IP can be leveraged to meet their business needs, to appropriately protect, use, and enforce their IP rights in the early stages of development can result in significant challenges later on in the company's journey. So recognizing the importance of IP and some of the challenges for SMEs and startups in particular, Federal Budget 2021 announced 2 new funding programs to help companies make better strategic use of their IP. So IP Assist, which Rula just talked to us about, as well as Elevate IP. So Elevate IP is a brand new program with a $90 million investment over 4 years that will help business accelerators and incubators, or BAIs, as I may refer to them throughout the presentation, and BAI networks to provide startups with access to professional IP services. Next slide, please. So in terms of who are the eligible recipients, the recipients for this new program are Canadian not-for-profit business accelerators and incubators, and Canadian not-for-profit organizations that represent networks of BAIs. So accelerators and incubators were a natural choice for recipients for this program, given their existing relationships with the startups that we were really looking to support, as well as their extensive knowledge of the local ecosystems. So each recipient that receives funding through the program is going to be delivering services to startups in the following 3 categories. So number 1, IP awareness, number 2, the development of IP strategies, and number 3, the implementation of IP strategies. You may recall from Rula's presentation that IP Assist categorizes their support in a very similar way. In terms of how it's going to roll out with our program, it may be a little bit different, as the recipients themselves will be offering the supports under these 3 categories. And so it may not roll out the exact same way as Assist does. So under the first category, you can stay on that side. So under the first category, each of the recipients are going to be providing IP awareness and educational opportunities for startups to ensure that they have that foundational IP knowledge that's required to participate both in the program, including in terms of the development and implementation of their IP strategies, and to also be able to more effectively leverage IP throughout their business journey. So this could include things like workshops, programs, conferences, peer-to-peer learning opportunities, and much more. As a quick side note here, I do want to emphasize that our intention is certainly not to reinvent the wheel, as there are many amazing resources already out there, including from our colleagues that have presented to you today, and the CIPO, which Lisa already highlighted, but rather to provide awareness targeted to the specific needs of the startups that are being supported by these recipients, which would of course include some sector-specific needs. Under the second category of support, each of the recipients will be helping develop the startups that they support through the program to develop their own IP strategies with expert advice, in order to ensure that those companies have the tools and the knowledge to manage and make the most of their specific IP assets and their specific businesses. Under the third category, recipients are going to be providing supports to the startups to execute on their IP strategies. And so, for example, the types of supports that might fall under this category would include support for the costs related to the formal protection of IP, analyzing the technology landscape, providing advice for IP licensing, and much, much more. So you'll notice that the way we've set out these categories are fairly broad. This was quite intentional, as we did want each of the recipients to have the flexibility to design their own offerings to best suit the needs of their startups, their accelerators and incubators, and the unique ecosystems in their regions. Next slide, please. So because we're delivering this program through different recipients, it's not surprising that each of our recipients will have their own unique objectives, but together we'll be working towards a common set of goals. And so over the next 3 years, we're really looking to facilitate IP supports to accelerators and incubators and startups to increase the IP capacity of the BAI ecosystem in Canada, and to enable BAIs to provide targeted IP supports to startups. We'll be measuring our progress against these goals using a number of key performance indicators, some of which are set out on this slide. I'm not going to go into all of them, but we want to make sure that the supports provided are high quality, that they're accessible and inclusive. We want to see recipients making use of IP through both the development of IP strategies and seeking and obtaining formal IP protections. And we'll want to make sure that the recipients are able to develop the tools and expertise necessary for sustainable expansion and growth. Next slide, please. So now that you have just a little bit of background on the program design, I want to give you a quick history on the program launch. So we launched our call for proposals in April 2022, and when it closed in June, we had received 17 proposals from across the country. Following a comprehensive assessment of these proposals, the recipients of Elevate IP were formally announced in December 2022. Our 5 recipients are distributed across the country to ensure national coverage. So from east to west, the successful recipients include Springboard Atlantic in Newfoundland and Labrador, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Prince Edward Island, Mouvement des Accélérateurs d'Innovation du Québec or Maine in Quebec, Communitech Corporation in Ontario, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan, the University of Calgary in Alberta, and New Ventures BC in British Columbia, Yukon, Nunavut, and the Northwest Territories. So since the announcement in December, program staff have been working with recipients to finalize their project plans and sign contribution agreements. And recipients are now working to hire program staff, connect with partners and collaborators in order to be able to begin offering the services to startups later this spring and into the summer. So much more information to come in terms of the rollout of the program. As I mentioned before, the activities of each of the recipients are going to vary very much based on the needs of their startups and the ecosystems that they support. And so with that in mind, I'm not going to get into any of the details of the different projects here or how you can apply to the Elevate services that will be offered through the different recipients. However, if you do have questions about any of the recipients' projects, I would encourage you to visit their websites or to reach out to them directly. Next slide, please. And so, like I said, if you do have questions about the specific offerings, we have shared the recipients' contact information on this slide, along with the links to their websites. And I will also ask my team to add that information to the chat, so you don't have to download the materials to access the links. We have also included our generic program email address in case you have questions about the program specifically. You are, of course, welcome to connect with us directly. And I will leave it at that. I'll open it up to your questions. We do hope that you were able to learn a little bit today about Elevate IP. You know, we're all really excited about all that this program has to offer, to see how much impact we can have on both the BAI and startup ecosystem over the coming years. And you know, as a whole, in terms of the Government of Canada programming, there's a lot of support for IP, and so I'm personally really excited to see how this rolls out over the coming years. So at this point, I'll open it up to questions.
Oh, fantastic! Thank you so much, Nicole. It was excellent, very brief, very on point. Lovely to hear about all those awards recipients. We do work closely within those regions and many of those partners, so we look forward to the program coming online, of course, so we can start referring clients. And I do see that the contact information for those individual entities have been shared in the chat as well for the audience to pick them up. Keeping the floor open to questions, given that you're right on time. Thank you for staying within the time frame as well. This is fantastic. And I see the websites are being shared as well. Thank you. This is great. This is fantastic. So any questions from the audience? Feel welcome to put them in the chat about the Elevate IP.
As we are waiting to see if any questions roll in, I will say, and Rula and Lisa already attested to this, you know, I know it can be quite a busy space in terms of IP. And so if you are ever in doubt, feel free to reach out to any of us. We're happy to make those connections and help make that space a little bit less unclear.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, it could be a little bit stressful approaching this segment, yet it's super critical and important, as it was stated multiple times throughout the sessions today. There has to be an IP strategy, and there has to be an ongoing approach to it, as our Canadian companies will thrive to grow. So seeing no immediate questions in the chat, I would like to shift gears a little bit, move to our next speaker, Beatrice, who is going to challenge our technological capabilities. She wants to share her screen and control the slides. Hi, Beatrice. See you popping on now. So I suppose we do have multi-speaker sharing capabilities now, thanks to my colleagues who are supporting us on the logistics. Would you mind trying to share your slides, and I'll be more than happy to make the introduction.
There you go. Can you see it?
Not myself, but let's see if.
Let me see. This one. Okay, someone is seeing it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I see some thumbs up, so looks like people are fine. Probably because I'm also sharing at the same time. I have limited capabilities. I'm relieved from my duties to move with slides. Thank you so much for that. Love to make the introduction and then let you take off with your slides. So Beatrice Osorio is a business advisor coming to us from International Trade Outreach and Promotion at Can Export Program, division within Global Affairs Canada. Our colleagues at CAC, we've been working with them very closely over the years. So Beatrice has more than 25 years of experience in customer management relational intelligence and business development. Beatrice's experience in the private sector, mainly in Central and South America, with an emphasis on the aerospace and defense sectors, allowed her to understand the way of doing business in different cultures and countries, develop competitive intelligence skills, as well as enhance the presence of women in a mainly male-dominated sector, for sure. In the private sector, she worked as a Cascade Aerospace at Cascade Aerospace and Collins Aerospace for the Latin American markets. From 2016 to 2019, Beatrice has worked based in Colombia, where she assisted military clients and participated in different international events in the region. Beatrice has a bachelor's degree, an MBA in international business from Université Laval in 2013, and she received the international designation CITP FIBP in international trade in 2022. Beatrice speaks quite a few languages, actually, I have to say, Spanish, French, and English fluently. She's currently the lead of the promotion and outreach for the Can Export program, the funding program of the Trade Commissioner Service at Global Affairs Canada. She serves as executive committee member of GAC's Latin American group. As well, she is part of the anti-racism working group at her division. Thank you so much, Beatrice, for joining us today. I'll let you take the floor and share us the slides that you have to present to us for Can Export.
There you go. Thank you so much for the invitation. As you will present me or introduce me, I'm Beatrice Osorio, leading the outreach and promotion of Can Export program. Before we go in details, as Lisa Desjardins from CIPO mentioned before, the IP Village was crucial for our understanding on how to support Canadian businesses and with their IP protection in a more effective way as part of the Canadian IP ecosystem. This graphic will allow me to visually understand the collaboration between partners and stakeholders, and where we identify 4 big groups. Some of the partners will support the IP via advisory services, development the IP, the other ones like us via funding with our colleagues from IP Assist and Elevated IP. Note that these partners, they also have other services like the IRAP IP Assist that not only provide the funding, but also the advisory and education. So this is just to have a broad idea of how we work. It was very important for us as a Can Export program because we are not expert on the IP. We don't have that expertise. So we needed to look for opportunity, collaborate opportunity with the stakeholders that they were the expert and help us to kind of narrow a little bit the expenses that we can include in our program. So let's talk a little bit more. The budget 2022 announced about a budget of $35 million for the next 5 years to protect IP. And note that we as a Can Export program, we were already funding IP protection, but we were not totally in a broader way understanding the impact of amplify these expenses for the benefit of Canadian entrepreneurs. So let's start by SMEs, which is the Can Export SME program. We used to consider patent, trademark, copyright, and trade secret. Now we're adding the industrial design. A big change was on the research fees. Before it wasn't eligible. Now we understood that that was a very important element for the company when they want to protect their IP abroad. Still remaining the other, anything related to IP dispute is not eligible for this program. And as everyone mentioned, the IP strategy, requesting assistance from a consultant is eligible for CanExport SMEs. In terms of operation, the creation of the IP protection or IP category was very important to us. It allows us to track and to get data on how this approach is working. So at the end of the year, we're going to find out how many companies apply in terms of IP protection, and it's important if we want to to support the budget that we receive. So the category H, IP protection, is including the patent, copyright, trademark, industrial design, trade secret, and consultation. On CanExport innovation, I would say was the program that has the most comprehensive description of IP protection. However, it was not very well known by companies. So that's why a lot of input in outreach and promotion and building the awareness, as the entire IP village is working on, is to amplify that message that IP, especially for your sectors, the quantum one, is very important to have this IP protection before going abroad. So we add industrial design and trademark for the innovation part. Another good change, or a big change, was to add the application of the PCT, which is the Patent Cooperation Treaty. And that was not considered before. Now it's considered, again, something that we learned from our discussions. And we conclude that it was important to have this as an expense, because the consultation helped us to avoid any overlap between programs. So we wanted to be, to have something different to offer companies. So this is my big table, is to explain CanExport SMEs. The purpose of the objective of this program is to prepare and to help SME companies to establish, to go abroad, to attend to trade shows, to meet future clients, future distributors. And the eligibility criteria, they need to be profit, incorporated, they need to have a CRN number, and minimum $100,000 in sales. So that is very important in order to apply for CanExport SMEs. But on the CanExport innovation, you don't need to have that 100,000 minimum revenue. However, the intent of this program is different. It's to assist your company to sign a partnership or a collaboration partnership with a pre-identified international partner for research and development. So make sure you have that difference in mind. If you don't have the revenue, the 100,000, but you still want to go and find client, you will not be eligible for innovation. You need to keep, because of the purpose of your objective. But if you're looking for partnership for research and development, yes, you can apply for CanExport Innovation. We don't ask for minimum revenue. However, somehow you need to have the resources to pursue this project, even though you don't have you don't receive the entire funds. And both programs are eligible for search fees, developing the IP strategy for foreign market, expert and legal advice not related to IP dispute. So make sure you have this very clear, the difference between two programs and the eligibility criteria. As a priority, we invite client companies to apply for CanExport for the IP protection. Is a priority. We reopen in February. There are already 1,000 companies in the queue. So please apply ahead of time. Contact your local trade commissioner in the regional office, or if you can, Beatrice, I don't know which one is mine, you can send me an email and I will, make the contact for you to be able to work with the trade commissioner, which is also helping you with connecting abroad. And then my next slide, I have the my contact information and the links for the program, for the applicant guide. They have been revised, so they are more friendly for customers to use. And you need to register in an online portal, wait for 7 days. So NRC, which is our partner, will validate your information if you're eligible or not, based on your CR number and so and so. So any question, please ask. And that's for me today.
Well, thank you so much, Beatrice. It was fantastic. And I'm going to open the floor for questions. I see already one in the chat there. Is the IP protection limited to quantum, or can be available to other photonics field? Is there limitations?
Yes, absolutely. It's for everyone. It's every company. Let's say you want to go to a trade show in Singapore and you are a clean tech company or consumer product company. Yes, you can apply for the IP as well. And we invite to apply for that. It's a priority. It's in our mandate. So yeah.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Any other questions? Because we are well ahead of a schedule a little bit. So that gives us the luxury of opening the floor to perhaps more questions to Beatrice or to other presenters from the previous sessions. We would love to capture any questions before we dive into our next segment, which is our live industry panel segment of the program, and the last piece of the program as well, where you can essentially hear live the comments from presenters on their experience and their journey on IP. And a for-profit segment. So can I just leave it open? Thank you so much, Beatrice, again, for joining us today for your engaging presentation. Absolutely, absolutely, anytime. So I see Chris is going live now, ready, and I am going to move my deck as well. Can I get a quick thumbs up that you guys can actually see my screen now? And I guess Beatrice has stopped sharing. Beautiful. Excellent. Well, thank you so much. It's been a lovely round of presentations so far. For me, it was very informative, actually, having known these programs from the past. It's always great to have this crash course and rapid fire presentations back to back, all perfectly timed, and make my job very easy. Actually, they don't have to issue any time warnings to my colleagues today. So I can basically roll over to the next segments, perhaps a little bit earlier, giving us a little bit more flexibility to perhaps pose more questions to the panelists as needed. And with that, I would like to introduce our panel moderator today, Chris Canters, who has kindly joined us today to help moderate the panel and basically manage the questions to our panelists. Chris himself has joined NRC a little over 3 years ago as IP commercialization lead. He has worked with various NRC IP market analysis and business development teams, focusing on getting more NRC IP technology into the hands of Canadian companies. Chris has 20+ years of experience working in the fields of intellectual property and business development, focusing on the movement of research and technology from the lab to industry, a very important exercise, obviously. He has a strong track record for building research alliances and commercializing novel technologies in such diverse fields as biomaterials, measurement technologies, software, nanomaterial, fuel cells, and wastewater treatment. Prior to coming to NRC, Chris was National Director, IP and Business Development at FP Innovations. While there, he was instrumental in building IP portfolios, developing complex research and licensing agreements with industry, and securing funding from federal and provincial governments, which resulted in a number of first-in-the-world biomaterial plants being built in Canada. Chris was also a key player behind the creation of Celluforce, a joint venture company with Domtar, which was created to commercialize FB Innovations' nanocrystalline cellulose IP portfolio. Chris has started his career working in R&D as a chemist at CIL Inc. Chris has a bachelor's degree in honors applied chemistry from the University of Waterloo, an MBA from York University here in Toronto. Chris is a passion photographer, did not know that. In his spare time, having recently obtained a professional photography diploma from the Photography Institute of Canada. And with that, I would like to pass it off to you, Chris. I would ask our esteemed panelists to go on as well. I see David right there. Hi, David. And Chris, well, welcome to make introductions and take it away with the panel. You're all ears.
Thank you very much, Iman. Good afternoon, everyone. Bon après-midi, tous à tous. It's really great to see that the numbers haven't really dropped off all during the session. So hopefully that's just a sign of the level of engagement and interest and so forth. I guess I'm really honored to have the privilege of kind of moderating the IP panelists and from the industry sector, quantum industry sector. So far you've heard kind of sessions around the different programs and the different tools that are available, et cetera, to help you in your journey with respect to IP protection, IP strategy development, et cetera. You've heard about public IP that's available to essentially support your own IP portfolios. And in the last few sessions, it covered all of the different programs that are available in Canada to also provide funding and support as you work on developing your own IP for your companies. When we were putting the program together, we felt that it would be good to round off the entire session here with a panel of quantum industry players to really hear about their experiences when it came to IP, some of the challenges that they've faced along the way, and hopefully as a learning activity for those of you out there that might be either in that startup mode or essentially looking at or thinking about potentially starting a company in the quantum space. And so it's my great pleasure to introduce our speakers. I don't see yet Sadegh on camera. Sadegh, are you on the line?
I am.
I see Sadegh. Yeah.
Oh, there you are. Okay, excellent. Okay, so first up, I'd like to introduce Sadegh Raizi, who is the co-founder and CEO of Focus Technologies. Sadegh received his PhD from the Institute for Quantum Computing at the University of Waterloo. And it's nice, Sadegh, I realize now we're both alma mater from Waterloo, which is pretty cool. And Sadegh is known for his pioneering works in macroscopic quantumness and algorithmic cooling. And so Sadegh, I want to thank you for your time, for joining the panel today. Really appreciate it. Next up on the list, we have Aaron Brodich, who is the co-founder and CEO of Entangled Networks, which was acquired by IonQ Canada in late 2022. He obtained his PhD in theoretical physics and quantum information from Macquarie University in Sydney, and has an MSc and BSc from Tel Aviv University. Between 2012 and 2020, Aaron held postdoctoral positions at the Institute for Quantum Computing at Waterloo as well. Fantastic. And the Center for Quantum Information and Quantum Control in Toronto. Aaron's currently working on at IonQ, developing the next generation of quantum computing systems based on trapped ions. So welcome, Aaron, as well. And last but not least, we have David Girison. I hope I pronounced that right, Dave. Dave has been with Xanadu since 2019, and he's helping the company to build partnerships in the public and private sector. Dave also manages the IP strategy for the company, as well as the patent portfolio in collaboration with outside counsel. And Dave has a PhD from the University of British Columbia. So welcome, Dave, as well.
Thanks.
Okay, so we're going to kick it off here, and just for everybody's benefit, I've got a few questions that I'm going to pose to the panelists, but then we'll open up for questions, and I'll ask Iman to help kind of monitor the chat, and we'll pull those questions in and ask the panelists as we go. So first up, I'd like to each of you to talk a little bit about one or two of the key challenges that you've experienced in your careers when it comes to IP. Within your firms, and for the benefit of this audience, maybe how you address those challenges, because we're hoping that the audience here can learn a lot from your experience, hopefully to also avoid things along the way, because there's lots of pitfalls when it comes to IP as well. So I'll ask Dave. Dave, why don't you kick it off for us here today?
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here and share a few thoughts and experiences with people. So the questions about like challenges that I've faced, I would say that over time, over the last 4 years in Xanadu, the challenges, what we put into practice has evolved over time. So when I first joined the company, there were 20 people, and seed round of funding had already been raised a couple of years earlier. So there was a team, they were busy building things, but the IP approach at that time was really ad hoc. And for various reasons, like earlier on in the company, publishing academic results about the technology that we're building was seen as one way to gain credibility. Because quantum computing is a long-term game. It's not something you can sort of slap together in a few months and bring out into the market. And so it's tough to really show a working product without a lot of time and money being invested. So publishing academically and talking at conferences is still something we do. It's less important now. But the challenge with that early on was, trying to figure out whether anything that was going to be disclosed was IP that we needed or wanted to protect. And then usually being under a kind of time crunch in order to try and get that done relatively quickly. And I guess the sort of third part of that is that if you come in cold with a lawyer or patent agent to try and look at quantum technologies in particular, it's not the easiest thing for them to deal with. A lot of them don't have much experience, so it can take longer and more iterations back and forth in order for them to actually get to grips with the technology and be able to give you a good opinion or go ahead and draw up patent applications in some cases. So yeah, I guess the solution to this challenge was for the company to keep growing and to attract more investment and build a bigger team and a bigger reputation. And then the pressure to publish has kind of fallen away somewhat. And so it's more, putting out academic results is done more strategically. And when it's part of the strategic plan, then you can also plan the IP around that as well and give yourself more time and breathing room in order to manage it.
Yeah, certainly all of us that have worked in different organizations with researchers understand the publish versus patent kind of discussion that goes on a regular basis. Thanks for that, Dave. How about Aaron? Why don't you talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you might have experienced along the way in your journey?
Yeah, so first, thanks again for having me. And I'm going to give the Entangled Networks sort of small startup perspective, which is where really I had to think a lot about IP. And there's multiple challenges, I think, but one that is particularly important for startups, for small startups, is understanding what you can and cannot say in a conversation. And you meet investors, you meet people you want to partner with, you meet potential customers, and everyone wants information, and that information, you feel at the beginning that your life is that information. You've worked really hard to kind of invent something. You don't want someone stealing it. You try to have NDAs in place where you can, and that works to some extent. It makes everyone around the table feel comfortable. People on the other side also don't want to always reveal their IP. With VCs, for example, you cannot have NDAs, right? They will just never sign NDAs, and you kind of know that going in from. Hopefully, you know that from day one. If you don't, then VCs are not going to sign NDAs. But other companies that you talk to, usually they're open to it. They're even kind of happy to sign an NDA because it makes everyone feel better. But then you're having these conversations, and I think one thing that kind of happened for us was we had a conversation that took a long time to arrange with some company, and the conversation didn't go well at the end. And we're trying to understand, and then we talked to the person who helped arrange this conversation, and he asked sort of behind the scenes, what happened, and how do people feel? And what we got was, these guys are being way too secretive. Like, we have no idea what they're doing. We don't feel like this is something that can move forward. And we discussed it amongst each other, myself and Ilya, my co-founder, and we realized that the big problem was we didn't set boundaries for ourselves. And so each one of us felt, I don't want to go over the line, so I need to be conservative. And so we're both super conservative in the discussion. I think the biggest takeaway from that, and I think it's really worthwhile, is when you're having a conversation, lay out the boundaries on like what are you comfortable revealing, and try to keep the conversation moving, and not to, when you need to be secretive, it's fine, but at least stuff you're willing to reveal, make sure that you are revealing and you're kind of keeping people interested. So that's I think one big piece of advice. The other one, which we didn't handle well, and I don't have advice for, but it's definitely a huge challenge, is what to do with software, and whether how to bring software to customers. The sort of easiest thing is to just give the in quantum, you're usually giving tools, and those tools, if you give them as open source, it's the easiest way to do it. But it's also very uncomfortable to give out your secrets. I don't have a lot of advice on that, but I think making a decision as early as possible really allows you to move forward and kind of either decide, okay, we're not going to reveal this. This is end of the world for us, and all conversations happen around that, or make the decision, we're comfortable revealing that piece. Let's just go ahead and do it, and not wait too long. I think that's the other big piece of advice.
I think that's really great advice, because I've also, at the start of my career, I've been in situations where we didn't have a pre-meeting to agree to what was going to be disclosed. And of course, the researchers want to show, they've got, a lot of technical capability, et cetera. And so certainly things can get way beyond where people are comfortable in terms of disclosure. So it's a great piece of advice, Aaron. Sadek, how about you? What are some of the challenges you've encountered along the way at Focus?
Yeah, first, thanks a lot for having me and for organizing this. This is really wonderful. I guess we had kind of the same challenges as Aharon and David. Like, I guess at the beginning, you need to figure out kind of the right strategy, not to disclose too much or not to disclose like too little, which would kind of block progressing. But I guess there were other aspects of the like an IP strategy at the beginning that we kind of challenged with as well. Again, we like Aaron, we kind of are building a software. One of the challenges we had was if patenting an idea is going to be defensible. So like, let's say that we patented, can we really discover if someone is using it or not? And this is like something that people like face regularly on, say, on the AI side or software side. But for us, this is quantum, so a lot of these things are new. So figuring the right strategy there, that was like one of the biggest challenges. And we haven't solved it. It's just like one of the speakers like earlier mentioned this. For us, this is an ongoing process. We just recently kind of made a new revision to our IP strategy. Like we kind of going with patenting some of the ideas and keeping some of them as trade secrets. So this was one of them. Another challenge we had was, again, this kind of goes back to the IP strategy. It was, so for, like, let's say that we want to file for a patent. Where do we file for patent? Because we don't have the resources to file everywhere. We need to keep, like, kind of pick the right countries, the right, like, geographical jurisdiction that we want to file this. Again, this is something that people deal with regularly when they do IP outside of quantum. The challenge inside quantum is that a lot of time you don't know where your competitors are. A lot of time there's like a new startup that you're not aware of, but they're like growing really quickly. And so this is another kind of facet that it makes it a little challenging. You need to be aware of everyone who is actively working in your environment and kind of include that into your IP strategy, whether it's about where to file, whether it's about like what to file for a patent or what to keep as a trade secret. And then another thing that I guess is getting a lot better is that at the earlier stages, it was really difficult to find someone with good expertise or like enough competence in the quantum technologies for like drafting a patent. Like right now we have more people, like all of us have more people in our circles, and a lot of these firms actually have been following a lot of this quantum patents that now they're like kind of getting more and more familiar with this. But 2 years ago, or maybe 4 years ago, this was really challenging to find the right people. So I guess those would be the challenges that we face.
Yeah, no, definitely. Whenever you're in kind of bleeding edge technology, that's that's one of the challenges you're going to face when it comes to people who can draft the claims and so forth around it. A bit of a follow-up question, I guess, and any of you can answer. I'm curious whether the whole issue of this timeline came into play when you were trying to decide between patenting and trade secret. Obviously, when you're very early stage and there's quite a few years to commercialization, et cetera, that can be a consideration. I'm just curious if that came up. I see, Aaron, you're nodding. So do you have some comments on that?
Yeah, 100%. I think, that it's a huge concern because, we're developing technology, some of it at least is not going to be used for a while. And then there's this concern that Sada kind of mentioned, which is, how well can we actually, even if we protect IP, how well can we defend it and even find that someone is breaching it? And so, when you file a patent, that patent gets published at some point, and so everyone can see everything that you've invented. And so you're protecting it in some sense, but on the other hand, if someone wants to copy it, it becomes a lot easier. And if you haven't figured out they copied you, then you're stuck. On the other hand, if you keep something a trade secret, and this was our biggest worry at Integral Networks, was not how do we protect our IP, but what happens if someone else patents an idea that we're working with, and now they're excluding us because we have, we're too late. This was a huge worry. I think, juggling that, I don't have like great advice on how to juggle that. We went on like trying to patent everything. So that we do feel comfortable talking about it and that we don't get blocked. But yeah, that's an incredibly difficult one. The other big piece that's very challenging in quantum is we don't know where the technology is going. And so we might be protecting, spending a lot of time, a lot of money and time protecting IP that becomes worthless because the technology is just not heading in that direction at all. And even in terms of developing IP, right? These are like the uncertainty about the future is a huge challenge, both for protection and for development of IP.
Yeah, that's great insight. Dave, Sadek, do you have anything to add to that?
I wasn't clear what you mean by timeline. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, I'm just referring to when you talk about a space like quantum where the commercialization will take place many years in the future. You can perhaps, again, I think the challenge here is if you're raising money, etc., you pretty well, you need to patent to some extent in order to disclose and so forth. But obviously, if you can wait longer, then the amount of time when you have that IP protection, it'll be more relevant, I guess, when you get to commercialization or others get to commercialization. That's one of the challenges in these emerging sectors quite a bit.
Right. Okay, I guess, so I guess like there are ways you can kind of accommodate that in your IP strategy. And I guess the general idea is that you start with like kind of a more generic patent or IP, and like kind of as you move forward and get kind of closer and closer to commercialization, you make newer and like more specific patents that are kind of falling under the same umbrella. At least that's what like the IP strategy that we are going with. And I know that in some other fields, they kind of have a similar challenge. Like I think pharmaceutical is one of them, where from the day that you invent, say, a new molecule or something like that, to the day that you actually can FDA clearance to take that to the market, it's going to be a long pass. And I think they kind of do a similar thing, but I'm not sure. But I guess, again, having the right IP advisor would be really helpful for these sort of situations.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, Chris, I was just going to add that this is another area that's sort of evolved over time for Xanadu, where we really focused on, for the first few years, on protecting our core technology of photonic hardware that will be used to build quantum computers, and then gradually expanded out from that. But there's a lot of uncertainty about, what quantum computing will look like in the sort of far future. And there's also questions about, you can have an offensive or a defensive approach to filing patents. Like you can patent what you have actually are developing as your own technology, and you can patent things that you think other people might develop or might use and have like a stick to use against them. But that sort of speculation about the future is extremely difficult. And a lot of the patents that we've seen that cover very broad applications of quantum computing and things, there's really like solid, well-founded ones, and then there's highly speculative ones that have basically no technical basis in them at all. But people have still spent money filing those patents. So we're still sticking mostly with protecting the technology that we build, but we're gradually trying to look a bit further down the road to say, you know, what will the commercial offering look like? We think it's going to be cloud services based off of quantum computing. Well, in that case, then what are the different features that would be involved, and you know, what are things that one could detect that are being used by one company or another?
Yeah, no, it's interesting because it's to some extent when you're in these emerging fields, it's a little like betting on horses at the track, right?
Yeah.
But it's an expensive bet over time, right? When you're talking about patents. So let's switch gears a little bit. I'd like you maybe to provide some, you know, advice to entrepreneurs and startups out there when it comes to some of the key considerations that they should think about when it with regard to capturing and protecting IP. I think, Aaron, you talked a little bit about that in your company, but maybe could you each maybe talk a little bit about that, and maybe we'll start with Sadeg in this case.
I guess there are two main things that if I were to go back, I would do a little bit more cautiously. One would be like setting up an IP strategy from the beginning. And I cannot emphasize enough on this. This is like, even if this is like a really, really simple IP strategy, like kind of going back to what Aharon was saying, figuring out what it is that we can talk about, figuring out what it is that we want to keep as an IP, whether or not this is going to be a patent or like a trade secret. And also like what it is that we want to publish. There are things that we can publish. They're not like core to our IP. So maybe we can like have some publication to kind of get some exposure as well. And then I guess kind of related to that, there are a lot of like training tools online for free that you can use for yourself and team. And this is another thing, like it's not enough for you to kind of educate yourself as a founder. You have to get your team to, like, I recently told one of my team members that for some of the things we do, like they name files, and sometimes in the way they name files is kind of revealing what kind of a algorithm they're using. And so it's not enough to just do it yourself. You have to get all of your team through that training. And if, like right now, everyone we bring on board, one of the first things we do for their onboarding is to just have like a 10-15 minutes talk about IP and kind of providing them with some resources around that.
Excellent suggestion. And it's as you saw today from the different speakers, there's a lot of great resources have been built there in the last couple of years. They might not have been there 5-10 years ago, but they certainly are there today for companies that are starting out. How about David? Do you have some comments on that?
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what Sadeg said. A lot of the people we hire have come straight from academic environments. So one of the key things is to try and impress upon them that this is not a normal academic environment. And so they need to be a little bit less, or maybe a lot less, communicative and chatty and sharing about information and what they're working on with their friends and colleagues around the world. And so we also have like an IP and confidentiality training when people come into the company. And yeah, I guess one other like recommendation I would make for people who are really at the earliest stages and just getting started, I would invite them to go and approach like IP lawyers and patent agents directly and ask if they can meet with them or talk to them. And usually a lot of them like if you give them an idea of what you're working on, that you're developing something really interesting, you're starting a company, a lot of times they will be willing to have a short free call with you and not necessarily charge you for at least very high level advice and suggestions about, what could be the first steps, practical steps going forward, or some resources that you could use. And yeah, the suggestion about it's the other one I've forgotten already. Sadeg had another good point, but I'll leave it at that.
No, that's a great suggestion. There's there's a lot of great firms out there that certainly will provide some service for free, in the hopes that you become the next big company and need their business and could bring a lot of business to their firms in the future. Aaron, do you have any comments on that question?
Yeah, I'm going to go and say something completely different, but again related to what I previously said. One of the big challenges for new startups is, again, what can you reveal in your initial conversations? When you're building a company, at the end of the day, you need customers. You have to go talk to customers. And one mistake we made early on, we corrected it, I think, quickly enough, but definitely a mistake we made early on is we were so anxious about our IP being revealed that we just kept very, very secretive. And just as a sort of example, from day one when we created Entangle Networks, our target customer, like number one on our list, was IonQ. But we're extremely nervous about talking to IonQ, and anytime someone suggested, our investors or anyone said, why don't you go talk to these guys? Like, no, we can't. They'll kill us if they'll take all our ideas. They have a huge company, all these experts. What are we going to be, giving to them? And it took a long time for us to have this first conversation with IonQ, and that kind of at that point we kind of let our guard down and started talking to everyone, and suddenly we're talking to all these big companies, and realized, one, our IP is worth more than we thought. Everyone is so impressed by what we've done, and two, no one's going to steal this stuff. I mean, we've worked really hard. It's not trivial stuff that we built. People would much rather buy it or partner with us, and as a small company, you can keep your IP secret if you don't have customers. I mean, you're gonna be buried with your IP. And so, you certainly have to be cautious and not reveal every single secret that you have, but also, especially in quantum, where we're evolving together, everyone is trying to work, everyone should be working together to build an ecosystem and build computers, build technologies. We should be talking to each other as much as possible. Being less secretive, I think, is very, very important. And I think that the companies who have gone out and talked about what they're doing, it really paid off.
Well, that's a great segue, Aaron, into the next topic I wanted to talk about. Obviously, with when you're a small company, you need to lean on other people. You collaborate with either public institutions, private institutions, your potential customers, suppliers, what have you. Maybe you could each of you can talk a little bit about, how did you approach that whole area of collaboration? What kind of were some of the key considerations when it came to IP and how you protected your IP and so forth? because I think that's, for sure one of the issues that almost anybody starting a company in those early stages is going to have to deal with. So, David, maybe you can kick us off on that question.
Sure. So, I mean, we have a lot of organizations that we work with, partners, if you want to call them that. And the relationship's always a little bit different, but what I like to do is to try to drill down to envisioning, like, what is the business of the people that we're trying to work with, and what's our business, and then sort of like figure out an arrangement that fits within what we're doing and want to do, and what's kind of drawing a line in the sand so that there's not a lot of blurring of the boundaries, and to try to keep things somewhat separate. So we work with academics sometimes, but it's very tricky. So we have to like carefully manage what projects we work on, and our actual most common way of working with academics is to use them as consultants and give them pretty clearly defined tasks and specify that we own all the output of their work. So that is not always possible. In some cases, we have like research agreements with universities, but then those tend to be very much like very far future looking and not really connected to our internal product development roadmap for the next couple of years. And then we work with big companies, and mostly they tend to be in the situation where we're asking them to supply us with something that is beyond the current product or service that's available on the market. Like, we use photonics and optical equipment. So a simple example would be a wavelength filter that is cleaner and more precise, has higher specifications than a standard commercial one that's available right now. And that is an example where, like, we aren't going to be in the business of making and selling optical filters, and we also don't have tons of expertise in like how to design or manufacture them, and we can kind of provide them just enough information, like our requirements, but we don't really have to share anything too detailed about the whole architecture of a photonic quantum computer with them. So I would say that more commercial relationship is kind of the easiest one to manage from the IP side. But for sure, when there's a like joint research, it can be difficult. And I think one key thing is to try to avoid, it sounds great to say, oh, let's collaborate, let's work together. But when you have joint inventions and joint ownership of IP, it just becomes a huge headache and nuisance to try to manage that. So whenever it's practical, I try to divide it up right from the beginning when you're defining the project and what people will do.
Dave, over a beer sometime, we'll have to talk. I got some great horror stories to tell you about joint IP that I've had with other organizations. So, Sadek, how about you? What kind of words of wisdom might you share?
Honestly, I don't have a clear answer for this one. I think, yeah, we all are trying to weigh the benefits versus the risks. We all know what the risks are. We all know what the benefits are. It's just that like for every single specific situation, it might be different. One of the things I guess that is different for like a smaller startup like us compared to maybe Xanadu is that we don't have as much resources to, like, if we are negotiating a contract with one of our partners, we probably can afford to do maybe, I don't know, maybe 3-4 rounds of like back and forths. And then pretty soon that will go above the budget that we have for the legal costs associated to that project. So in a lot of these cases, we really need to be aware that like going into these things, like if this is a big partner, they easily can outspend us. And so we need to have kind of a clear picture of what it is that we want. What we have been trying to do is to kind of going back to the IP strategy, to identify areas that are less risky for us to collaborate with others. So like, for instance, this could be like, we've developed some innovation. Now we want to validate this. Validating this, we can work with, like, because we don't expect there to be any IP. Like, admittedly, there could be. We may go to the lab, start building it, and we may come up with a better idea, and then we have to figure out how to handle that. But what I'm trying to say is that there are areas that are easier or like less risky to collaborate with, especially academic partners. And another thing is that working with academic partners, yeah, we need to be really careful with like IP strategies at universities. Sometimes it's not the fact that the IP agreement is not in your favor. Sometimes it's just the complexity that makes it really difficult to, say, raise your next round of funding. It's just that people go through that IP agreement. It's not clear, like there are like there are areas and gaps that like people can't figure out how that's going to play out in the future. Like the university may be willing to work with you, but just because that piece of paper that you have as the agreement is not clear, that could easily block raising money in your next investment. And that could really be like complicating a lot of stuff that we do. So yeah, I don't really have a good answer for this.
Aaron, any other thoughts on that subject?
Yeah, I think, it's extremely challenging for a small startup. I think Sada mentioned a lot of the difficulties, which is you're not only, when your IP portfolio is not huge, each piece of IP is incredibly important. And when people look at it, investors in particular, they're going to ask questions like, who owns the IP? And, are you going to run into trouble if these people who are currently extremely nice, suddenly, something changes in management and someone else comes in and they decide, oh, we want, we want this piece of IP. So I think you have to be very careful. I mean, once you get into contracts, listen to your lawyers. You have to be, extremely careful with what you're doing, and you have to consider like how, like Sada said, right? How critical is this to your success as a company, right? If something goes wrong with this, piece of IP and someone suddenly wants a piece, does that kill you? I think for us, we were very lucky with the MyTechs we've done with the universities. We were very clear on what the academic partners should not be developing, which, so we made it very clear that we want to own all the IP, but our expectations are also, we're not expecting the academic partner to develop any IP. That worked well, but we did have at least one case when we were trying to co-develop a piece of core IP with someone else, and we couldn't have an IP agreement, and that's fine. I mean, it happens. Sometimes everyone is trying to be fair, and you should always, I think, being fair is incredibly important, but sometimes there's just no path, and that is also fine.
Yeah, I think we could probably have a full session on just horror stories and things that came that people have experienced along the way. So
Yeah.
we've got, oh, sorry.
Chris, I'll just echo what Aaron just said, that like we've dealt with some universities before where the IP situation, their terms were really not at all what we were looking for. And instead of spending a bunch of time and energy on it, we just walked away and said, you know what, there are lots of other people that we can work with around the world instead of wasting months trying to get a university to change their position.
Right. Good point. Okay, so we've got 5 minutes or so left, 7 minutes, whatever it is. I wanted to just open it up to questions from the audience. I don't know, Iman, do we have any questions yet at this stage, or maybe we can open it up now and see what questions might come up?
Not so far. I guess people were listening intently because we do have quite a few of our audience sticking around all the way till the end. It was a really engaging discussion. I can a lot of it resonates with us as well in MyTax, working with a lot of early stage startups as they try to develop their technologies. So it was fantastic to hear your experience and your comments. We can, I guess, leave it a little bit open to see if anyone can pop in with any questions. So
Can I
far,
make a comment?
For sure, yeah.
Sure.
So I guess this is not in the scope of like what we just were talking about. It's kind of a reflection on some of the supports that is being provided in the communities. First of all, like, yeah, the support on the IP side has been like really changing in a good direction. The only comment I kind of have is looking at a lot of these programs, they kind of tune more towards later stages of a startup. Like you need to have revenue, you need to have like some number of employees to be a client of that program. And for a lot of these startups, they need to build that IP strategy at the very, very early stage. And that's when they don't have that many employees, they don't have revenue, especially for deep tech, like quantum technologies, for instance. It takes a while before we get to, say, 100K of revenue. So I think what I'm saying is that it may be worth like revisiting some of these assumptions we have for admitting some of these companies to these programs.
It's a great point. I think that's a gap that has there's sessions going on in Parliament right now around IP commercialization. I'm not sure if you've seen them, but that gap has been identified by at least one of the speakers that I saw during those sessions. And I think it's something that definitely, you know, if we want to help a lot of startups get through that initial stages and to be successful, then that's something that should really be addressed at some point. Do we have any questions yet?
I do see one question, and I wanted to just basically reaffirm what Sadek mentioned. We do also see as a funding program the gap as well. At MyTax, we've been trying to kind of move a little bit away from just the size assessments, more into the capacity assessment, but nonetheless, that gap exists. And I wanted to acknowledge that. I hope that we can move towards a more friendly policy around there. And I see chat has posted a question that could potentially warrant a session of its own, I might add, but Chad is asking, what can universities be doing to make their IP policy more appealing to facilitate collaboration with startups in particular? So whomever wants to take a first stab at it.
Yeah, I think, you know, one is, again, I would say we've had, you know, at Entangle Networks, we've had very positive experiences with the Canadian universities we've worked with. But one thing that is incredibly important for small startups is having very clean IP. And you know, many projects with universities are not going to generate IP, or are going to generate IP that is, you know, not necessarily incredibly important. And for the universities, it doesn't make a lot of sense to be very hawkish about the IP. Whereas for the startups, just to have that clean sort of record when investors are looking at the IP and having people not worry, you know, is, I mean, there's a bit of an imbalance there. Again, we've had, you know, good positive experiences, but you know, that can be like a source of dissonance.
So if there's no other comments, Iman, I'd like to take 1 minute or two just to thank these three gentlemen. It's been a really interesting, engaging discussion. I think we've identified, we've really helped probably a lot of people that are on the line understand some of the key things they should think about. You know, when you talked, Sadek, for example, about IP strategy early on and about how we build the relationships, etc. I think it's been a really informative session, and you know, perhaps the horror story one can be something down the line that we can look at. So I really appreciate all of you taking the time out of your day. I know that when you're in the early stages of companies and so forth, that you know, time is really valuable. So I really appreciate your time today, and I want to thank you on behalf of Iman and myself for joining us today.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks, Iman.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Chris, as well, for moderating such an engaging panel. We are absolutely perfectly on time with quantum precision, I have to say, which is so fitting for a session like this on quantum. I wanted to turn back to our audience who stick around. I really appreciate your time. I wanted to basically end this session essentially with a brief high-level summary, reaffirming what Sadek just mentioned in terms of appreciating the ecosystem support that exists, barring all the challenges and all the sort of gaps that still exist that we have to fix. I was hoping to relate to you guys as a take-home message that there is every effort and every tendency on the part of our different partners within the government, but in post-secondary institutions and different agency and adjacent agencies to MyTax, to help and support our growing quantum ecosystem in Canada. We are hoping that in the session today, we were able to basically raise more awareness about the importance of IP and IP strategy, all the services that are available to you guys. So unless there are some burning questions, I'm still monitoring the chat. I would really like to end this session with an open invite to please connect with us. Let's talk. Let's see how we can be of support. Most of the agencies that I spoke today, our colleagues in ISED in different entities, from CIPO to IRAP, we're all connected and engaged together as one larger innovation ecosystem support, basically a village, if you like to call it. So we'll be more than happy, no matter where the touch points are, we will be more than happy to bring the right resources at the table for you guys. At MyTax, of course, our bread and butter is engaging you guys with researchers in academic institutions and helping you guys develop some of those innovative solutions, or perhaps enhance some of your existing products. But of course, with other agencies, we can actually seek some connections and meaningful support that we can bring at the table. That would mark the end of our session today, about 10-14 minutes early as well, which I'll be happy to give back to you all. I wanted to end with a special thank to all our speakers today who took time out of their busy schedule, presented such engaging sessions to all of us. Great refresher on the vast services available to us on IP. I wanted to thank again our panelists who took time out of their busy schedule to join. But more importantly, also to all of you guys in our audience who attended and sticked around till the very end of this rather long section and segment. It was very encouraging. So hopefully we'll just follow on and continue with more info sessions of the same nature in the future as we try to raise more awareness about availability of services to the quantum ecosystem. But let's not forget that MyTax does have other areas of focus as well. So hopefully you can expect from us in the future similar segments and sessions targeting other priority sectors within the industry as well. Thank you all. I would like to end the session here. And
just could I add one thing?
Absolutely, Chris, go ahead.
I would like to thank you personally for stepping in.
Thank you.
You know, we haven't mentioned Reza. Reza did a great job with us to put this thing together, but because of a personal emergency, you stepped in and you did a wonderful job with a lot of craziness in the last few days. So I'd like to thank you personally for that as well.
I really appreciate it. Thank you to Jeff as well for the support with the NRC team. And with that, I would like to end the session. Another housekeeping reminder that we will be sharing this recording. And for the participants in the panel, please expect a copy of the full deck to be shared with you all as well. So hopefully you can use that for future reference and use it as an opportunity to connect and engage with my colleagues. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and we hopefully be in touch in the future.